In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
One of these men is a highly respected New York attorney, Lucas A. Ferrara. The other is a self-proclaimed man of the people, known as Mert Roberts. Their aim is to discuss the hottest issues impacting our city, state, and nation. Fasten your seatbelts. Shake it off with Mert and Lucas. Live starts now on AM 970. The Answer.
That's pretty ominous, Alex. What's that called?
We are returning to Loser by Noji Suma. Why are we talking about losers?
I guess we're going to be talking about a loser of sorts. Hey, Mert, you ever hear of Timothy Chalamet or Timothy Chalamet? I'm not even sure how he pronounces the name. Is spelled real weird.
I'm sad to say I haven't heard of the name.
Don't be sad. Don't be sad. I'm not really a fan of his either, to be honest, and the only reason we're talking about him is a controversy.
Well, I didn't say that. I said I ain't heard of the name. You're saying something else if you're not a fan of him, but I ain't heard the name, so let's get that straight.
Oh, my goodness, he's already starting off being a murderator. Look, he's beating me up, Alex. Now, just in case you didn't know, for our listeners, he's a 28-year-old who came from the New York theater area and art scene to become one of the most closely watched performers of his generation. Critics praise his range, fans praise everything he does, and Hollywood keeps handing him roles that suggests that they're betting on him for the long haul. He's an Academy Award-nominated actor, by the way, known for his breakout role in Call Me By Your Name. He's got a global fan base. He's got a resume that spans indie films, prestige dramas, blockbusters. I think he was in Dune. He's become one of the most defining performers of his generation. Now, we assume he didn't intend to start a culture war. I guess nobody wakes up and thinks, you know what? You know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to antagonize the global opera and ballet world. But that's precisely what the poor guy did. And that's the thing about modern celebrity, Bert. You don't have to intend anything. You just have to speak or tell a joke or a half joke or joke in a way that doesn't land, and then the internet does the rest of the work for you. So let me set it up, and then I'm going to ask you a question, Bert. So there he was, February 24th, sitting across from Matthew McConaughey, he's a famous actor, I love him, at a CNN Variety Town Hall. Now, it was supposed to be a conversation about craft and ambition and the arc of a career, and then he said this. Ready for it, Bert? Here's the quote. I don't want to be working in ballet or opera, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though it's like no one cares about this anymore. Then he said, all respect to the ballet and opera people out there, I just lost 14 cents in viewership. Now, yeah, it was probably a joke, the kind of things actors say when they're unscripted and want to be a little dangerous, but the internet is not a comedy club, and within hours, those clips were circulating. Within a day, it was a referendum, and within 48 hours, it was a cultural flashpoint. Within 72 hours, it was a full-blown arts sector grievance. Now, to understand why it landed the way he did, Mert, you have to understand the landmine that Chalamet stepped into. Because here's the truth, Mert. Opera and ballet are not dead, but they are anxious, and anxiety makes everything sound like an attack. Now, are you an opera and ballet fan?
Well, I think it's obvious that I'm not. A fan of both.
So you don't care for opera and ballet?
Absolutely not. And I know you're a big fan of it. You know, maybe you wanted to be a ballerina or something like that. I'm not sure if that's the case.
Oh my goodness! I don't believe he just harassed me on the air. I wanted to be a ballerina. I don't know.
But it's apparent that
even the audience is shocked.
Connected to this, you know, they say a hit dog will holler, and you're hollering very loudly at this little comment. So apparently, you're a fan of the ballet and opera.
Well, I've been to quite a... Look, am I a diehard fan of ballet and opera? No. Have I been? Yes, multiple times, yes. But the focus here is whether the statement by Chalamet was appropriate, because he set off a lot of people. Now, opera singer, for example, Isabel Leonard, she's a Grammy winner. She's a Metropolitan Opera star. She didn't hold back. She said, honestly, I am shocked that someone so seemingly successful can be so ineloquent and narrow-minded. She said, to take cheap shots at fellow artists says more in this interview than anything else he could say. In other words, she felt that it reflected badly on him. Deepa Johnny, who is another opera star, echoed the sentiment, a disappointing take. Artists should come together across disciplines to uplift the art form. Even a Royal Ballet star, Fernando Montaño, in a letter wrote, it is important to remember that our words carry influence. Now, I think, Mert, before you chime in, Andrea Bocelli, you know him. He's the famous opera singer. He's blind.
Andrea.
He's really good. He said as follows, I think he hit it on the head. Opera and ballet are art forms that have endured for centuries and continue to speak to the human heart because they fulfill a deep need for beauty, truth, and emotion. They are not arts of the past, but living languages that can still move us, inspire thought, and bring different generations together. Now, that's moving, okay? That's what the guy should have said, not knock ballet and opera as if it's for old people or it's dead. I mean, the institutions like the Metropolitan Opera and others have fought back big time. In fact, they made a joke of it. They used Chalamet as a promo code, and they created videos, knocking Chalamet. They offered free tickets. I mean, look, the rest of the internet did its best. They argued, they memorialized, they memed, but they turned the 12-second clip of Chalamet into a cultural referendum. But you know what the ugly reality is, Mart? This is the ugly. Only 2.2% of U.S. adults attended an opera performance in the most recent survey year. That's only 2.2%. And that's down, by the way, from 3.2% a decade earlier. Opera, unfortunately, Mert, has been declining steadily for 20 years. Now, that's not something you should be attacking. That's something you should be trying to support and uplift. I think that's the problem. In ballet, slightly better. 2.8% of U.S. adults attended a ballet performance, so that's a very it's a very small minority, and that number has remained stable, but is not growing. 68% of arts organizations fear long-term financial instability. 54% report declining donor engagement, and 61% say they struggle to find younger audiences. How do you fix this, Mert? It is dying. It is suffering, for sure. What's the fix?
What are you talking about? What's the fix? Am I fixing something?
Well, because you don't find it attractive. So what do they need to do? Well, they need to break dance. They need to break dance on the stage. What do they need to do?
You just talked all that time. You could have started with, I think opera's dying. How do I fix it? But am I talking about the actors' comments, or how do I save opera?
We're talking about all of it. I thought the actors' comments were insensitive, but the ugly reality, the truth behind the comment is that...
Can I address his comments first before I move on to the next thing?
Don't get so testy. Maybe your ballerina outfit's a little too tight. Maybe the ballerina outfit you're wearing is a little too tight. You're too needs to be loosened up a little bit.
You just spoke for 7 minutes right there, and I don't know what I'm supposed to address because you're speaking for so long. It's like, let me talk about the main points before you just stop after speaking 7 minutes, because I have no interest in fixing ballet. According to you, somebody already said that it's been around for generations, so it doesn't seem like it needs to be fixed. But let me address this individual's
Well, it's having
comments.
some attendance issues, and that's the other reality.
Don't charge $1,000 for the ticket, and then people show up.
That's,
okay,
there you go. That's
all right.
a valid
That's
critique,
that's
by the way.
That's an easy. Make it affordable for the average person to actually enjoy it, instead of trying to make it where the millionaires and billionaires like Lucas can only attend these events. Make it where everybody can attend these events, and then you wouldn't have issues. Make it where the average little girl, from middle class family,
You're
or
on
from the
this.
ghetto,
you're right on
or
it.
the girl from the ghetto can be a ballerina and make it, and not have to worry about attending Juilliard in order to star on Broadway or something like that. But to address the comments of Mr. Chalamet, however you pronounce his name, sorry if I'm messing it up.
Chalamet, Timothy Chalamet. I don't even know how he says his name. But
to address those comments, I'm going to say this: that community of ballerinas and Broadway people, they are doing exactly what he's doing. They are taking advantage of a very shallow opportunity to get on their soapboxes and to promote themselves. They're doing little promo codes like you referenced. They're making a joke out of it and trying to take it seriously at the same time.
Which is smart, right? I thought that was smart.
If they want to have this integrity, then they should stay away from any of this stuff and let the art form do its thing. But trying to come out and saying, well, this guy, because he's a very safe target. I mean, it's some white guy. He's probably not, some angry white guy. Some white guy who's just an actor. So he's a very easy target to go after. But I'm not sure if 50 Cent said something like this, or a rapper or something like. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have that same energy, because the backlash wouldn't work for them. So I think that the artsy community, which you're a big part of, you like to buy expensive paintings and all that type of stuff. So I know that you're one of these people who get offended by this type of stuff. But you know who to attack. You won't attack somebody who's aggressive. You'll attack somebody who's just some innocent old little white guy who just acts in movies. I'm pretty sure his audience is mainly teenage females. So, come on. You don't need to attack this guy. If ballet and theater is such a strong form of entertainment, it will survive, just as you alluded to, it's surviving for all these generations. So I think that, you connoisseurs, that's a word that you would like, connoisseur. That's how you would describe yourself. A connoisseur of this type of entertainment. I think you guys need to just leave regular people alone and just keep going to your ballets and keep going to your Broadway plays and just let people have their opinions. Nobody's going to come in and take what you got, because most people don't want it. It's too unattainable.
I think you're hitting on some really important issues. Opera and ballet, extremely expensive to produce. As you said, ticket prices are off the charts. They require massive institutions behind them. They rely on donors, foundations, public funding, and they depend on audiences who are aging faster than they can be replaced. That's the other problem, too. A lot of their audience members are dying, Mert. So when a young influential celebrity says no one cares, it hits a nerve. And I think that's what happened here. It feels like a confirmation. It feels like a verdict. It almost feels like a threat. And I think that's why they reacted so strongly to it.
Well, then they should come out and say, you know what, this is something we've been concerned about, and we're glad that Mr. Chalamet pointed this out, because we need to come up with some solutions to fix this problem. But they didn't do that. They did what they always do. They tried to exclude his opinion and treat it like it's not valid. They tried to make an enemy out of this guy. And if he's as popular as they're trying to make him out to be, this could actually backfire. Because they could say, we don't like how these elitists are talking about our heartthrob. They're teenage heartthrob. They're trying to attack this guy. You could lose an audience with that type of behavior. So they need to be careful and mindful of their behavior and how it's probably led to people viewing opera like it is. Because he might have said those comments thinking that, oh, those elitists, they wouldn't watch somebody like me. My movies, they might not have enough substance for somebody who likes the Broadway and the ballets. So he might be taking a shot at his form of entertainment, but because these people are so elitist in their mindset, they don't even see that.
Well, interesting. I mean, look, he did not win the Oscar the other day, which I guess makes him a loser, and that's hence the theme, which our opening thought, because he was supposed to win an Oscar and he ultimately didn't. And if you've been reading the papers, a lot of the people said it wasn't this remark that cost him the Oscar, because apparently voting had stopped. Before he made this comment after voting had ended, but a lot of the media is reporting that people who met him ended up not liking him. So I think he's come off a little bit jerky, if you know what I'm saying. So this may have not been the smartest move on his part, and just shows you how dopey he really is. But then you hit on something else, by the way, that I thought was really important to emphasize. Opera houses, by the way, as a result of Chalamet's remark, have seen a spike up in engagement. Ballet companies reported more traffic, and the Metropolitan Opera, that came out with a viral video, people are responding well to people who haven't thought about an opera in years are suddenly thinking about it. So maybe, Mert, Chalamet did them a favor. What do you think about that?
Well, that's what I was trying to refer to earlier.
Yeah,
where
I know.
You attack somebody who's popular because it works out for you. You wallow in the same cesspool that you're trying to criticize.
No, they're defending their right to exist. They're defending their right to make a living. Thousands and thousands of people work behind the scenes, dancers and actors and opera singers and stage people and costume designers and stage designers. Thousands upon thousands of people rely on these areas of the arts for their livelihood, and to just summarily be dismissive of it, I think that was insensitive. But the fact that they came back and were defensive put them back on the radar for a lot of people. So maybe there's an uptick, something positive to come out of all this. I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
I think you're right. I mean, I also think we aren't in the era of the three tenors. I mean, Pavarotti and
they were great. Yes,
Placido Domingo and all them. Those were classics. And now maybe this comment is going to highlight
they were great, Mert. They were filling out stadiums. Okay, they were making good money. Go ahead, Alex. Focus your point.
Well, also I met Placido Domingo. That's why I can mention it.
Oh, you did.
I think the opera is a great cultural experience, and I agree with Mert. It has to be more affordable. And Chalamet might just be saying this because he lost. I think there were 9 nominations, by the way.
Yeah. Well, Chalamet is going to survive this. He will clarify, apologize, or move on, and the internet will find a new controversy, and the cycle will repeat. But for 1 week in February, opera and ballet were trending, and that, in its own strange way, my friends, is a victory. Because if there's one thing both art forms understand better than any other, is this: drama most certainly sells. And you know what else sells, my friends? How about this being episode 89 of Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas Live? This is Lucas Ferrara, and with me in the studio is the great Mert Roberts, affectionately known as the Mertonator. Working the board is none other than Alex Garrett. He's got a 5-star rated podcast, One Leg Up with Alex Garrett. Please check it out. And of course, let's not forget Hermine Santos back in Master Control. Thank you, Hermine. We appreciate it. When we come back, we'll be joined by Dennis Brennan, who wrote DC Swamp Strikes Back. You're going to love this guy, Mert. A no-nonsense, boots-on-the-ground look at how Washington really works when the cameras aren't rolling. He's the guy that cuts through the fog, calls the game as he sees it, and tells the story like you're sitting across from him at the bar. Me, Mert, Alex, Dennis, Brennan, all of us in AM 970 will return after these messages. Stick around, because after the break, Dennis Brennan is stepping into the studio. He's the man who wrote the DC Swamp Strikes Back, and he isn't afraid to tell you what's really sloshing down there. Don't wander off. You'll want a front row seat when he starts peeling back the muck.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
What does the perfect celebration look like? Great weather, great company, and unforgettable views? Just imagine your birthday, anniversary, or company party set against the iconic New York City skyline. Sound too good to be true? It's not. When the weather warms up, there's no better place to celebrate than on board the Atlantis yacht from New York Cruises. From intimate gatherings to full-scale corporate events, Atlantis Yacht is a premier floating venue offering a truly unique experience. Their dedicated team of hospitality professionals will help plan every detail so you can relax and enjoy the moment. Your guests will be wined and dined across the main deck, sky deck, and lounge deck, all featuring breathtaking 360-degree views of the Manhattan skyline. Birthdays, anniversaries, engagements, company parties, reunions, retirement celebrations. If there's a reason to celebrate, Atlantis Yacht is the place to do it. Call 212-633-1231 to book your unforgettable event today, or visit NewYorkCruises.com.
Whether you're in the market for a Toyota truck for your fleet, business, or personal use, the one thing you're really looking for is the real deal. Enter ToyotaTRD.com, an online resource where you can get down to the real deal on upfitting a Tacoma and Tundra for the trades, a fleet, or any business. Get the real deal on Land Cruiser, 4Runner, Sequoia to power your non-work life on or off the road. At ToyotaTRD.com, business owners and fleet managers find the solution for all their commercial or work truck needs. ToyotaTRD.com shares your specs with dealerships that are able to have your truck set up a test drive or schedule delivery. Whether you work hard or play harder, you could accessorize any Toyota truck to fit your lifestyle at ToyotaTRD.com. Call 844-TRD-TOYOTA and use the promo code Joe to receive additional savings. That's 844-TRD-TOYOTA, promo code Joe to save with ToyotaTRD.com.
Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
That's interesting. What's that one called, Alex?
All right, this one is called Swamp Rock by Alana Jordan again.
Swamp Rock. Perfect, Alex. Next up, we're joined by Dennis Brennan. He's the straight-talking author of DC Swamp Strikes Back, an insider's look at the power games, pressure points, and political acrobatics that keep Washington permanently waterlogged. Brennan spent years tracking the players and the playbook from the bureaucratic back channels to the media echo chambers, and he's carved out a reputation as the guy who can explain the whole mess in plain English. He's sharp, he's unfiltered, and he's got stories that don't usually make it past the gatekeepers. And in just a moment, he's going to walk us through the swamp he knows all too well. Welcome to the program, Dennis.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoy being on.
Well, it's a pleasure and honor having you on. So much so that the Murdinator insisted he start with the first question. Go ahead, Murd.
Yeah, because I'm very fascinated with people who actually understand DC, the swamp, how all of that stuff works. So the first question that I would like to ask you is, how much of this is collusion, what we see going on in the swamp? Meaning, how much of this is actually Democrats and Republicans working together and profiting together and destroying together, however you want to put it, and then letting the rest of the country keep up this illusion that, both sides are fighting against each other for the betterment of their people?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I think what you really have, though, is this additional class that we don't elect. The swamp, in my mind, the swamp has, the deep state, which are the people that aren't elected, but they're never leaving Washington. They believe they're running things. We also have the media now that's part of that, and they want you to believe whatever they say rather than what the facts are. And I do think you have some politicians, and I think that's what you're referring to, from both sides that kind of just play along to stay in office, and they go along. They're not really interested in making changes that benefit people.
Well, the thing I'm thinking about is just think about how difficult it would be for a third or a fourth or a fifth party to become involved in our way of doing things. So it seems like there has to be some kind of collusion or something going on. It doesn't have to just be the politicians, the media, all of these branches, all these arms are, I don't know how to put it, but different aspects of the swamp, as you put it, working together go ahead.
Well, I think the system's set up to make sure a third party can't win. We have the system set up that way, where you see democracies in Europe where you can have coalitions put together, for instance. But yeah, a third party's dead on arrival. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for any third party candidate to win the presidency. Sure, you can win as an independent or a third party in a congressional race, but even that's hard. We're stuck with the system we have, for good or bad. I mean, some would say you don't want to have a coalition government that then can disband after someone gets mad. Especially here, we've been getting mad all the time.
So if we have a system that works, well, I don't want to say works, but, it's doing a good job. In my opinion, it's doing a good job. It ain't perfect, but it's doing a good job. But if we have this system in place where, people are leery of it and consider it a swamp, if it's been this effective, what is the real incentive to change how things are done? Because I really don't see anybody doing more besides complaining, especially when their side loses. But for the most part, when they win, everything's great. When they lose is when they want to complain.
Well, of course. But I think what you're finding, if you go back and look historically, the change really comes from the people. People push things to happen. It's not, if it was up to the politicians, they would change nothing. They battle out who gets control of Congress, who controls the Senate, even the presidency. You just live through the 4 years and you're like, okay, we'll get them next time. But it's the people that make the change. They either demand change and push for it,
now,
or they don't.
Saying that, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to let Lucas get in here because he's got some real good questions. These are going to be better than mine. But we were talking about what should we do with Cuba? Should we allow? I said the Cubans should fix it on their own. They should either crash or fix it on their own. Lucas was saying, America should intervene and help out. What do you think about those type of situations where should you let the people figure out their own stuff, or should other nations intervene in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think every problem is different. In this case, in Cuba, we may have caused some of those problems. We're not by taking out Venezuela, we took out their supply of oil. They depended on them almost totally. Are the Cuban people going to be able to do it on their own? They're not armed to be able to do that.
Right.
It's the same thing we're seeing even in Iran, where people are asking, why aren't people on the street? Well, they don't want to be shot to death.
Right.
They're waiting. And I think in Cuba, how are they going to do it on their own? At some point, and if they do, is it going to be any better? It's like when the Shah of Iran was overthrown, what, 79 was that? It didn't turn out to be better. And now you have some people, and maybe even back then you had some people questioning why Carter didn't do anything to prop the Shah up.
Right. You think the United States could ever fall that far, or do you think we're insulated from that?
I think we have so many protections, we're not going to have that problem. Although I do believe there are people in this country who would like to see a revolution, and I don't think it's coming from the right.
So when you talk about a swamp, where is the swamp then? If we're protected,
that's the question. Yeah, that's the question.
Where's the swamp at then? I'm just curious. So what's the swamp?
There you go.
Well, the swamp. You're talking about those deep state members that are there in government. They kind of ignore whoever the president is. If they agree with them, they'll do things for him. If not, they'll work against him. But they're almost running a shadow government. You have the media, which backs up that, claiming, well, they're, civil servants, they're professionals. No, they're really not. There's too many people who have done things that aren't on the up and up, and they're getting away with it just because they're longtime government officials. I think, you've got that factor of the media not being that independent referee anymore, which it's supposed to be. Instead, they're taking sides. We have advocacy journalism now. You have the government officials who will work against, the president or work against the majority, votes. I mean, people in the last election sent strong messages to every elected official, everyone that was elected. But a lot of those people that were elected didn't care. They ignored that. You still have, public officials out there who support illegal immigration, who don't want anybody deported. Well, that's not what the people voted for. And every poll says the people wanted mass deportations. Right now you have the SAVE Act sitting in Congress, and what is it, 70, 80%? I think it's 70-something percent are favoring that, according to polls. And that's every poll. And what are the congressional people doing? They're blocking it. So they don't think they have to listen. It becomes the people against this swamp. But I mean, are we protected in that? Can the government be, overthrown? No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think you can overthrow any government without the backing of the military.
Right. And that's the problem that we're seeing in Iran, and that's the problem we're going to see in Cuba. Has the swamp always existed in some form? We only have about a minute, Dennis, before our break. But is that a modern label for an old problem? Give us what is the swamp?
I think at the very least, the deep state has existed. I do think, I didn't think so when I started writing the book, but when you see things like Jefferson going after Aaron Burr, for instance, and the connections between family and, friends and, publishing companies, just like we have now, where they're going from government into publishing. I think to some extent it's always been there, but it's really, really gone to a higher level now.
And they're more ingrained and more in power. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And can Trump do anything about it? Because he promised to clean the swamp, but he doesn't seem to have been doing a good job.
Yeah, I think, it's a slow process. I think you can start the process, but that's going to take 12 years, although that sounds like a commercial for Republicans to
Dennis, we have to take a quick commercial break, so hold that thought. Have no fear, Dennis Brennan will be rejoining us after these quick commercial messages. For more info about Dennis and his work, visit his website, authordennisbrennan.com. You'll also find his book, DC Swamp Strikes Back, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. We'll have the links on our website, shakeitofflive.com. Mert, Alex, Dennis, and I hope you'll stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Dennis Brennan is waiting back in after the break, boots on, book in hand, and ready to tell us what's bubbling under the surface of DC Swamp Strikes Back. Grab a snack, take a breath, stay close. The muck gets good when he's in the room.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to NewmanFerrara.com. That's NewmanFerrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
We love bringing you products that improve your life. Well, this product can save your life or the life of those we cherish the most, our youngest children. There are approximately 5,000 choking deaths in the U.S. each year. One child dies every 5 days from choking. Children under the age of 5 are most at risk. There is a solution. It's called LifeVac. Arthur Lee is the founder, CEO, and inventor of LifeVac. LifeVac is a simple rescue device that can change your child's life in a choking emergency. It's non-invasive and easy to use, and one kit fits the whole family. If you have a young child in your family, I strongly recommend you visit the LifeVac website. That's LifeVac.net. Listen to Arthur's compelling story and view the videos demonstrating its ease of use. LifeVac works in 3 simple steps: place, push, and pull. The LifeVac device dislodges the obstruction and suctions out the food or object. It's that simple. LifeVac.net, made in the USA and FDA registered.
Most people don't see danger until it's too late. I've spent my entire life seeing it early, for more than 4 decades. First as a highly decorated robbery detective in the South Bronx, then building the largest privately held security company in America. I learned how criminals think, how they move, how they attack. I deployed in the business more than 7,000 officers across 500 cities, protecting millions of people, thousands of locations, including the families and portfolio assets of my clients. Today, Brosnan Consulting Services delivers global intelligence, risk advisory, and strategic security planning, identifying and stopping threats before they become a reality. Brosnan Consulting Services. We solve problems. 914-588-1807. 914-588-1807. Because in our world, there are no second chances.
Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
Dennis A. Brennan is the author of DC Swamp Strikes Back, a sharp examination of power, pressure, and political gamesmanship inside Washington. With years spent studying the machinery of government and the personalities who drive it, he brings a clear, informed voice to one of the country's most enduring political backgrounds. For more about Dennis and his work, visit his website, ArthurDennisBrennan.com. You'll also find his book, DC Swamp Strikes Back on Amazon or wherever books are sold, and we'll have the links on our website, shakeitofflive.com. Now, Dennis, you have compared Trump's rise to the presidency with Aaron Burr's ascent to national power. Now, why and what similarities have you found?
Yeah, I think the biggest similarity you'd find is both were kind of neophytes when they headed to Washington. Burr had about 2 years' experience in the legislature, but he was an unknown. Nobody even knew where he stood politically. And I think we all know Trump could have been, he was a Democrat. He could have run as a Democrat. He probably would have if he thought he could win in the primary in 2016. So these guys were a little naive when they ended up in Washington and then all of a sudden started facing, real opponents that, Washington's a little different than maybe what Burr had seen before. And certainly Trump wasn't involved in politics at all, except as someone to donate money and show up at parties.
Ha ha ha. So, but they were great disruptors, were they not? Is that the point of your analysis?
Yes, they both were. I mean, they were both, they made people uneasy, is what it comes down to. I think part of it, Trump changed a lot of things within the Republican Party, and now even in the country. And Burr was changing the plan that the Virginia, what they used to call the Virginia Mafia, Jefferson had Madison and Monroe, and they had this dream that they would have the presidency for, continuously 2 terms each, which eventually they did, but Burr was the guy in the way. And, what most people don't even realize is Burr really was the one that was responsible for getting Jefferson elected. But there's not much loyalty in Washington, so he was cast aside as soon as they could.
Yeah, because Jefferson went from supporting him to actively undermining him, no?
Yeah, exactly. It took a little convincing to get Jefferson there, but when they started talking about treason, Jefferson bought into it, and, it's easy to buy into it when your guys are telling you that.
Well, let me ask you, the role of judges, you talk about them in your book as well, both in Burr's era and today, they're shaping outcomes in a politically charged way. How do you address that, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think we see it, with Burr, he had some good luck with a couple of judges, Judge Innes on the first treason trial, and then he had Justice Marshall, the Supreme Court justice, who oversaw the second treason trial. And both of those judges followed the law, which is great. I mean, as you know, as an attorney, that's all you could ask for.
That's right. That's the ideal, is that not take aside politics, take aside your personal perspectives. Your role as a judge is to apply the law. So you applaud them for doing that in Burr's case?
Yeah, and I think that's a real big distinction. I think with Trump, he had kind of a split among judges, and maybe some of his, like Judge Cannon in Florida, did him a great favor, I think, because that might have been the strongest.
With the top secret documents and all that stuff, yeah.
Right.
That. Yeah.
And that might have been the best case they had against him. Now, people can say that case, maybe shouldn't have been brought, but out of all the cases they brought, that might have been the best one they had, and she delayed it enough that it didn't really matter.
Right.
I think, on the other hand, though, he ran into some of, the New York judges where, perhaps he wasn't getting a fair shake. You have
you're talking about the criminal case, or the one where the valuation of his properties. I mean, there were several cases that I think they were, the outcomes were problematic.
I think Judge Merchant was the criminal case.
Yeah. Arthur
and
Gorin.
Yeah, and and Gorin probably, both of them may have, had biases that they should have put themselves on the other side and just left give the court to someone else on these cases. But, some of it too is when you give instructions, like in the criminal case, I'm not sure, maybe New York is different, but I've never seen it where you basically don't have to say what the second crime is. You just have to say there was one. It becomes very confusing. And, for most of us, when you look at that whole case, and I guess that's not the judge's fault, but when you look at the whole case, you're like, well, is that really something we're going to make a felony out of? Pay a fine. You may have put something in the wrong column. You may have said it's the wrong thing.
Well, a lot of people had problems with the dentist because it wasn't clear who the victim of it was. Who was the victim? The bank wasn't complaining. The bank got paid on its loans. So if he overstated the value, so what? The bank had an independent obligation to do its own appraisal. And if it didn't agree, it didn't have to fund the loan. So I think people had a problem with this whole underlying theory that he perpetrated some sort of fraud. On whom? I'm not sure. It wasn't clear to me.
Right. Well, and we all know banks never take the word of the borrower. They do their own.
That's right.
And I think the Deutsche Bank witness even said, "No, we don't. We disregard all that. We have our own system." Which, of course, I mean they want to make sure they're covered, and they're not going to take mine or yours or Trump's word for it that property's worth something.
Right. If the collateral doesn't support the loan, they're not going to fund it. I didn't understand the case either, to be honest with you. But let me ask you, let's get back to your book, though, the Burr and Trump. So you seem to see a lot of analogies between the two over time. So are they kindred spirits, or what's your point about them in the book?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different points. I think there's some similarities on how they were treated by their opponents, by the court system, by the press, for instance. Like, we think, most of us now, when we look at the media, we think it's never been this bad. But during Burr's time, there was something called the party press era, where the parties either funded or owned, the newspapers. And they were pretty blatant about who they were with and who they were going after. So Burr was victimized, if that's the right word, by those that were loyal to the Jeffersonians. And, it wasn't fair reporting then either. So I think both of them suffered from that. Now, Trump handled it differently. Trump goes after and fights with the media, where Burr, as an attorney, just figured, well, this is all going to wash out in the end, and I'm going to prove that I'm right legally. So he didn't really fight with the media. But they both had that same battle. They both had, questionable decisions made in courts and by prosecutors, and whether the prosecutors are being fair. There was a prosecutor named Davies who brought the treason trial first. He was also a publisher who was writing stories about the case, and he made himself a witness in the case. So this guy really wanted to go after Burr, and you'd ask why. Well, he's related to James Monroe. So we go back to Virginia. And I'm sure he was the U.S. attorney for that reason. He was connected in a family way.
What do you want readers to take away from your book? Why should our listeners buy your book? You have about a minute, my friend.
I think because the historical view, you get to see that as much as we think this is the worst time we live in, we've lived through these kind of things before. If you're a Trump fan, there's a lot of good information in the book that tells you evidence that you can use in any discussion you have with people. If you're not, and maybe you're anti-Trump, you look at it and you say, I didn't know that. I didn't know this fact or that fact. Because everything we do, we reference in the book. There's, it's all factual. Every once in a while I throw my opinion in, but we don't cite me as an opinion, so those you can tell easily. Well, and I think it's a good read for people.
And it is a good read, and we certainly recommend it. But unfortunately, Dennis, we have run out of time. Believe it or not. More about Dennis, you'll find him on his website, authordennisbrennan.com. You'll also find his book, DC Swamp Strikes Back, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And Dennis, we'll have links on our website, shakeitofflive.com. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Well, my friends, that concludes show number 89. May I hear an amen?
Amen.
Thank you, studio audience. Special thanks to the one, the only, the Murdinator, Murd Roberts, my co-host. 89 amazing episodes, 178 hours of live entertainment. If you think that's easy, you try it. Alex Garrett, thank you. Couldn't have done this show, what am I saying, without you. Check out his 5-star rated podcast, One Leg Up with Alex Garrett. It's great.
Now that we've talked about it.
Yeah. And to everyone behind the scenes at AM 970, Laura Schaefer, Matthew Sambola, and Joe Sevilla, Frank Volpe, Ryan Pagano. Oh, and we can't forget our friend and master controller, me. Thank you. Before we go, check out my movies. They're streaming everywhere. Manor of Darkness, New York Times loves it. Check out my other movies as well. And if you're listening to us live, The Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates is up next. It's a great show. I love her program. You don't want to miss it. So stay tuned for that. Join us next week. We'll have more controversial topics, more special guests just for you. Same time, same place. Ciao, ciao.
The preceding program is sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.
In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.